Okay.
Okay. All right. I'm just going to start very soon. So what I'm going to do is that because we also have to record for my TV show back in Nigeria. So we're going to do this as well. Don't worry, your faces are not going to be in it. It's going to be my face and the slides. But I thought so it's best to just kill two birds with one stone. Just get that done. Do one or two episodes while I'm here. So we're going to do that. Let's see now. Up, start. Being the best health TV show in Africa is not a. You got to keep up appearances as much as possible, right? All right. Let me see now. So share my screen. So we're recording now. Share my screen. Almost there, guys, ladies. Second here. Get this silly thing out of the way.
You're coming and going again, David.
Well, maybe it's because I'm saying.
You're mumbling.
Yeah, I am mumbling. Okay.
Stop recording. Start it again.
Huh? What was that?
Start the recording over again.
It's okay. They'll take care of it. Okay. Well, hello and welcome to Your Health in Your Hands. I'm Dr. David Ajibade, and we're going to continue our discussion on Alzheimer's disease, which is a form of dementia. Dementia simply means that the brain is losing its faculties. You're not able to function, able to think, remember, and even speak. And sometimes it actually takes charge of your whole brain seems to shrink, and eventually the individual dies. It's a big problem in the Western world, especially the United States, but it's beginning to spread around the world as people grow older and older and older. We've talked about different things in the past, but today we're going to be talking about the balance of life, how your hormones, your endocrine system, how they affect your brain for better or for worse. I'm going to do some recap along the way. This Alzheimer's disease, it's a big problem, a really, really big problem, and billions and billions and billions of dollars have been thrown at it. Still, to all intents and purposes, we have not been able to see any really, really good solution to it. So it's still a big problem. And the question is, are we approaching it in the right way? And I'm going to try and point out some things that we probably are missing out, especially if you're going at it if you're talking about it from a medical establishment, the standard medical approach. Neil Bredesen is a wonderful doctor, neurologist, who is looking at things differently. He's like a maverick in the field, and he's really getting some really, really good results. And he's looking at it not as a drug problem, but really as a systems problem, looking at the different systems, different things that are triggering dementia, and it's looking to see how to affect those. And I'll be talking about some of them very soon. I probably have to mute. I'm going to have to mute everybody because I'm hearing some sounds in the background. If you don't mind, mute yourself. Would really appreciate it. But I can't really do that by myself now. So please go ahead and mute yourself. Thank you very much. So why is it such a problem? Well, you see a normal brain on the left. That's what most of our brains look like. On the right is a brain that has been riddled by, devastated by Alzheimer's disease. It's been wreaked. Havoc has been wreaked on this brain. And that's probably why it's such a difficult thing to treat, because the brain cells are probably the most complicated pieces of biomachinery in the known universe. It is so complex. The brain is so complicated, so sophisticated that it's really, I mean, it's the highest possible level of hardware that is known to man. So to replace those brain cells is such a difficult thing, especially if you're looking at it, looking at replacing it or repent it from a drug perspective. And that's one of the reasons why they say they think it's such an insurmountable problem, because it's the brain is once the brain is damaged, it's really, really hard to come back from it, even with children. And I can tell you from experience that even our best efforts don't really get those kids back 100%. So if it happens in an elderly person, it's even worse, because obviously the reserves that you had as a child no longer are not there anymore. So it's a lot, very, 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 very difficult. There's a lot of sad information about Alzheimer's disease, especially in the US. But I'm not going to focus on that too much. But what I would always like to point out is, okay, number 5 and number 7, twice as many women will suffer from Alzheimer's disease than men will. In fact, the stats now say that if you're a woman, you're more likely to have Alzheimer's disease than you are to have breast cancer. And you know how common breast cancer is. Number 7, twice as many Black people age 65 and over are going to have Alzheimer's disease compared with white people. So that's another problem again. That really bothers me. Again, Alzheimer's disease, we've talked about this in the past, the top causes of death, what people die from the most. Alzheimer's disease and other brain problems and nervous system problems come in number 4. Research is now showing that it has leapfrogged respiratory disorders and is now in at number 3, just behind cancer and heart disease. Back to Dr. Dale Bredesen, brilliant guy. I've almost finished reading his first book, the first program to prevent and reverse cognitive decline, the end of Alzheimer's disease. And he's written another book here too. So I'm going to point out some of the things that he says, and there are about 3 main areas. He talks about the synapses a lot, where one brain cell meets another brain cell. That is where the action happens. That is, okay, I probably want to point, let me just point that to you right away. So this is a brain cell here, that's a brain cell here. For your brain to function, for you to move your fingers, for you to move your eyes, for you to see, for you to create a memory, all of that and everything else that you do has to be done at this level right in front of you, where 2 brain cells meet. There has to be the transmission, the transfer of information, of chemicals called neurotransmitters from one brain cell to the next brain cell. If that process is affected, then your ability to think, to learn, to remember, to move, to speak will be affected depending on where that compromise has happened. So it is super important. We're going to win when it comes to Alzheimer's disease and dementias or any brain condition whatsoever. You're going to have to win at the level of the synapse. And there are billions and billions of these synapses. The other thing Dr. Bredesen says is that there are 6 types of dementia, not just one. So you can't just use one pill and think you're going to solve the problem. There are 6 types. We're not going to go into that now. We've probably done that. If you've missed our past talks, please go back into our archives. These are being archived on our website, brainandbodyfoundation.org. brainandbodyfoundation.org. You're going to look for Wednesday webinars and you'll see these recordings. We also send them out to those of you who have registered for the live programs. Now, the last thing he says is that Alzheimer's disease is not just caused by one thing, it's caused by, see, we all think about the amyloid plaques and the tau tangles, those proteins that kind of block the synapses. That's what causes, we thought caused Alzheimer's disease, when those plaques kind of like congregate around the synapses and cause problems. New research is showing that is not really the problem as much. There are 36 different problems, everything from blood flow problems to high sugar problems to toxic problems, fungal, mold, inhalation of mold and other things. So it lists about 36 things. And one of them obviously was, a few of them had to do with the hormones, which is what we're talking about tonight. So let's get into that a little bit more. Remember, we talked about the central governing system, the 3 systems that control the other systems. The brain and nervous system are one. That's a pinkish thing here, a pinkish lilac, I would say. The endocrine system is number 2, what we're going to talk about today, and the immune system, number 3. These 3 systems control all other 9 or 10 systems in the body And if you're going to have any degree of success in any problem, any chronic disease at all, you're going to have to understand how to strengthen these three. And since we're talking about the hormones, let's talk about that some more. So the endocrine system is these are the glands, it's a system of the body, the glands and the tissues and organs in the body that produce about over 200 different hormones, over 200, everything from thyroid hormones to your sex hormones, to your sleep hormones, to, let's see, insulin, that's a big one. Your flight or fight, so everything that has to do with the quality of your life really comes down to your hormones, everything. And of course, your sex drive as well. I thought I mentioned that before, I'm not sure now. But sex drive, everybody seems to perk up when I mention sex drive for some reason. I don't really know why. But that is, like I said, there are about 200 different hormones in the body affecting everything from digestion to several different things. There are seven that have the greatest effect on the brain. And I'm going to get into that in some more detail. And I got to tell you this because we in medical school, we really didn't appreciate the importance of hormones, especially the importance of hormones on our brains until, I didn't appreciate it throughout medical school, even as practicing as a doctor. It was when I started learning these other things outside of medical practice that I began to apply them into our treatment of brain disorders and all those things back in Nigeria, that I really began to appreciate it. I'm just going to run through a few things. Hormones affect our brains. There is no question about it. PTSD is called post-traumatic stress disorder. I saw this a lot. I'm a military veteran myself. And when I went back to Nigeria, I wanted to really work with people, wanted to work with the army and the military to help address their PTSD problems. And this is all over the world. I understand now in this country, it's down to about 17 suicides per day of war veterans, military veterans. Is a big problem. A lot of that has to do with hormones. A lot of that has to do with the derangement of hormones. Same thing with emotional stress. You're bothered about your life. You're having financial problems. You're dissatisfied with your life. You're lonely. Hormones. Marital stress. Hormones. Workplace stress. Hormones. School stress. Asthmatic attacks, sickle cell crisis. I see that with the kids I'm working with. Kids will be normal, doing okay, playing around happily. But once it's time for exams in school, for instance, they get stressed out, they forget to take their medications, and they get a crisis, or they get an asthmatic attack. And it can be fatal in some cases because of hormones. And of course, we can't, everything we're talking about these days, we have to include COVID-19. COVID-19, there are some people who have not gotten over their illness from COVID-19, maybe a year, maybe 2 years. It drained their brains, it drained their endocrine systems in the ways that nothing else has done to them. They still have friends who are seriously fatigued from the infection and having had COVID-19. It all has to do with hormones. Again, I mentioned at the foundation too, we know kids are being affected because of the hormones. Either they're out of whack or there's too much of one and too little of the other. So if we're going to, and I said all that to bring us back to what we're talking about today, which is if we're going to have any beneficial or any benefit on the brain, we have to take into account the hormones. And I'm going to say a little bit more about that. But I mentioned that there are 7 hormones that have the greatest impact on the brain. Let's list them out, excuse me, one by one. Insulin, we all know what that is. We'd be surprised. We think insulin just has to do with sugar. Thyroid hormone, estrogen, which is predominantly female hormone, but men have it as well. Testosterone, progesterone. These 3, 4, and 5 are called the sex hormones or the steroid hormones. Number 6 is also a steroid hormone, cortisol. That's the stress hormone. That's what's released every time you're stressed out, you have an argument, you're running away from danger, you're dissatisfied, you have stress at work. That's cortisol, and it's a problem. It's a big problem for many people because it seems to be in very high levels. I'll tell you what it does to the brain. Number 7, I will mention that probably in the second aspect of our talk. Let's see now. What time is it? Just want to make sure that I have the right time. 8:24. I didn't mark the time before we started. Darn it. Yeah, delete that, darn it, from this place. All right, so the Magnificent Seven. I've mentioned these already. And all seven of this, we're now finding out, have an effect at the synaptic level. Remember what we said. If you're going to win when it comes to brain, healing your brain, recovering your brain, strengthening your brain, if you're dealing with mental health issues, if you're dealing with depression, the solution has to have a positive effect on the synapse. If it doesn't have a positive effect on the synapse, then you've lost before you even started. So these hormones, let me go back to them in a minute. Yeah, so these hormones, especially 3, 4, and 5, have positive effects on that synapse that we just showed. They have positive effects. And as we grow older, because the levels of those tend to diminish with age, that's positive, that's strengthening, that's beneficial effect on the synapse dwindles. So as we'll talk, say in the later talk, we'll talk about how to replenish the levels of these hormones. All right, amazing things about insulin. Now, let me just say this: your brain does not need insulin to, you know how you need insulin to drive sugar or glucose into the cell. Brain cells don't need insulin. However, if there's high levels of insulin, high levels of glucose in the blood, it's still a problem. Your brain does not need insulin, but high levels of insulin, high levels of glucose are still a problem. What insulin does for the brain, and I was shocked when I read this, insulin actually also helps in the rebuilding of nervous cells and in the protection of the neurons. It helps in the rebuilding of nerve cells and in the protection of neurons. It actually competes with amyloid beta, but that's a different story for another time. But insulin is really important for your brain. The next thing is estrogen. I'm kind of like rushing through these just because to give you an overview of the 7 hormones. And then we're going to talk about how to ensure that these hormones are in the right balance. All right, estrogen is super important for brain cells. Let me mention a few things. In clinical studies, estrogen was shown to improve energy production, reduce oxidative stress, increase brain cell survival during damage, enhance the release of protective chemicals, and here we go, improve memory. Okay? Taking estrogen before and during menopause resulted in increased brain volume, especially in the hippocampus. The hippocampus is the memory center of the brain. That's where memories are stored for a short time. They are integrated and then they are sent wherever they need to be sent. But that is the first port of call. If your hippocampus is damaged or is not working like it should, you will not be able to retain memories. What we know is that if you're stressed out, and I've experienced this personally, you're stressed out over a period of time, your cortisol levels are going to be high. They're going to damage the hippocampus. I know I'm getting ahead of myself now. It will damage the cells in the hippocampus, and that will cause memory problems. All right. That's estrogen, I think. Okay. And then thyroid hormones. Obviously, thyroid has to do with what? Energy. The thyroid hormones are important for generating of energy. What hastens or improves your metabolism. The thyroid hormones are low, you're more likely to gain weight, you're more likely to be, tired all the time, you're more likely to not think as effectively as you should. In fact, the commonest cause of preventable mental disorder, mental retardation, the commonest cause of preventable mental retardation is iodine deficiency, especially in children. If those kids don't get the iodine at the right when they're developing, when they're growing, they are most likely going to have mental retardation. And why do they need? What was the connection between iodine and the thyroid hormones? The thyroid hormones use iodine. The thyroid gland uses iodine to make the thyroid hormones. So, bottom line is that the thyroid levels have to be optimal. Otherwise, you are not going to have a healthy brain as much as you should. So if you've checked your thyroid levels and they're low, you want to ensure that you're taking the right prescription, right medication to ensure that your thyroid levels are up. I am not going to say that one supplement is going to replace a thyroid hormone, but there are supplements that can also help where thyroid function is concerned. Next thing, progesterone. We all think of progesterone as a woman hormone for women. Men don't have it, but we're wrong. Men have progesterone as well. The brains of every human being have progesterone receptors. And what does this progesterone do other than prepare you to have a baby? Amazing things, absolutely amazing things. And these are things that we learned after medical school. These were not part of our training as medical doctors. Progesterone is super important. Progesterone has been linked with improvement in cognitive function or the mental process of understanding through thoughts and experience, as well as in using intellectual processes such as thinking, reasoning, and remembering. Thinking, reasoning, those are what make us human beings. Thinking and reasoning and remembering. The only thing they didn't mention here is speech. It says a few other things here that I'm not going to mention. It also says progesterone helps in the repair and recovery of damaged brain cells. Very important. According to a 2017 study, there was substantial evidence in animal models that show that the neuroprotective role of progesterone in central nervous system injuries, including stroke victims, and so on. It says that there was substantial evidence. Yeah, so it helps in strokes as well. Progesterone protects the brain through several different mechanisms and systems, thus reducing the mortality rate. Anyway, bottom line is that it's a lot of words. I got to tell you, too many words to bother about. Bottom line is that progesterone helps to heal, to protect the brain, and if the brain has been affected, it helps the brain recover. I mentioned cortisol before. Quick mention again. Cortisol. Gives you your get up and go. But if it's too high, if you're constantly up and going, you're constantly in a state of fear, or anger, or anxiety, or depression, or loneliness, or you're running away from someone, or trying to avoid someone, or you've dealt with a problem in the past, trauma in the past that hasn't been resolved, that has kind of been programmed into your brain and your body, the cortisol levels are bound to be chronically high. And once they're chronically high, they do a lot of damage to your body as a whole, but to your brain specifically, and it affects the hippocampus. Again, it affects the memory center of the brain. So amongst other things you want to do, you want to be able to sleep well, and you want to be able to rest and relax. If there's need for forgiveness, there's a need for letting things go. You might need help doing that, but it's going to be tough to help your brain recover if this is a problem in your body. And most of us have, to some degree or the other, these things that are lurking around in our brains, in our emotions, in our psyches, that probably we need to let go of, but some more than others. Okay, testosterone, that's the man's hormone, right? That's your, the libido, the dominant thing. We know in animal kingdoms, in the animal kingdom, chimpanzees, apes, lions, the ones with the highest levels of testosterone are the leaders of the pack. But it's more than just that. We know that testosterone helps to protect the brain. And one of the reasons why they're saying that men are probably more protected than women are in their older age, after the age of 65 and onwards, is because while women's levels of estrogen drops, they don't have anything to replace it with. But men have, even though their levels of estrogen and testosterone drop, the testosterone can be converted into estrogen, which protects the brain. So they're seeing that one of the reasons why why men, like I said, are more protected or don't have as much Alzheimer's disease as women, they're looking at testosterone. There might be other factors as well. We might discuss them. LH, we'll probably talk about that later. So you want to improve your endocrine system. If you do what I'm going to be asking you to do in the next few minutes, you're going to see some improvements in your mood, Those of you who are still dealing with monthly periods or have very severe, distressing monthly periods, you see a marked, in some cases, reduction in your in the pain and the cycles as they go along. And if you're dealing with menopausal issues as well, the night sweats, the labile emotions, you're feeling good 1 minute, the next minute you're feeling terrible. If you're dealing with depression and dealing with all these things, it's all a question of the hormones. If you can get those hormones back in balance, you'll be amazed, absolutely amazed at how well it works for you. And of course, who doesn't want better sex, right? Okay, so that's end of. I don't know how much time this went through, but anyway, let me see. So I did okay. So at this point, I'm going to have to pause and well, okay, I'm going to say this and end this. So, folks, thanks for joining us on this talk. We're going to continue next week. We're going to be continuing with part 2 of balancing the balance of life. Excuse me. How hormones affect your brain for better or for worse. So don't forget to join us. If you want to catch up on the videos, please go to our website, brainandbodyfoundation.org, and you'll see all the videos there. And of course, you can follow us on our social media platforms, Brain and Body Foundation. They're all called on all the different platforms, Brain and Body Foundation. God bless, stay healthy, stay strong. See you next time. Bye. Okay. All right, so we're going to go into the next part now. Please type in your questions and okay. What time do we start? 8:35. So by 9 o'clock we should finish. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Your Health in Your Hands. I'm Dr. David Ajibade with the Brain and Body Foundation. We are continuing our talk on the balance of life, how hormones, for better or for worse, affect your brain. And so we had some interesting discussions last week. We're going to continue with that as we go along. Now, as I mentioned last week, hormones, whether estrogen, progesterone, the sex hormones, insulin, they all affect our brains for better or for worse. So it's really, really important that you understand how to keep your hormonal levels in balance. I pointed out that there are these are certain areas. PTSD is called post-traumatic stress disorder. This is something that happens in the war front. It also happens unfortunately, in domestic situations, whether in spousal situations or with children, when there's sexual abuse, some severe traumatic events that is so emotionally charged that it's almost like programmed into the person's brain and body and stays with them for such a long time, and it keeps on deranging as they go along. It deranges the balance of hormones, whether in terms of mood or whether in terms of sleep or sex. These things are all affected. We see this in the military as well. Once you have PTSD, it can affect your blood pressure, it can affect your blood sugars, your ability to metabolize your energy levels, and so on and so forth. It all has to do with hormones that are being deranged, that are out of balance. So you need to be able to know how to address that. We've talked about the different things like workplace, like stress in the workplace, stress at school, COVID-19. COVID-19 has caused a lot of PTSD for a lot of people. As we mentioned, the 7 hormones that are most affecting the brain, that have the greatest impact on the brain, I've listed them out here: the sex hormones, plus the insulin, plus the thyroid hormones, plus the cortisol, and LH is called luteinizing hormone. Okay, let's talk about this system again. Remember, 3 systems control the remaining 9 or 10 systems in the body. The endocrine system is right there in the middle. So the endocrine system influences the immune system. The immune system in turn influences the endocrine system. The immune system also influences the brain as well. The good thing about that for people like me is that you can actually improve brain function by addressing the immune system, because over 20% of the cells in the brain are actually immune cells. And like we mentioned in the last talk, The brain cells are the most complicated. They're the most difficult pieces of hardware to replace. But if you can, outflank or instead of direct frontal attack of the problem, address it through the companion cells of the brain, and you can strengthen those companion cells, they in turn can help to nourish the brain cells. So what we always do when we're addressing brain problems, like I keep on saying, is that we address the digestive system, we address the endocrine system, we address the immune system, we address the cardiovascular system. All of these, by addressing all of these indirectly, they will also address the brain as well. That does not mean we do not address the brain cells, the nerve cells themselves. But the best results always come when you do multiple things at once in a focused, intelligent way. And that's what we're going to be getting into. All right, what are we supposed to do? Let's start with the basics. But the bottom line is that you want to limit exposure to the things that wreak havoc on our endocrine system. And you want to focus on the things that strengthen it. All right? If we're going to improve our hormonal balance, we're going to try to avoid the things that mess up this balance. And how are you going to avoid something if you don't know what it is? So hopefully we'll point out some of those things. So you want to strengthen things. So common sense things. You want to make sure your blood pressure, you check your blood pressure. That's a given. Even your blood pressure is controlled by hormones, believe it or not. You want to ensure that your blood sugar levels, hopefully if you're not pre-diabetic or diabetic, if you have high levels of glucose, again, that comes from the terrible diet that most of us have, right? It's all the processed foods, all the high sugar level things. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. All those things spike blood sugar levels, and blood sugar levels in turn will affect our endocrine system. Once blood sugar is high, blood insulin is going to be high as well. So some of the things that are recommended is that you do a fasting blood insulin levels. Insulin has to be, once insulin gets out of hand and it's always high, it's going to cause damage to the brain as well as to the endocrine system. People talk a lot about cholesterol. What they're saying now is that cholesterol levels, even LDL, are not as important as the triglycerides. So you want to look out for the triglyceride levels. You also want to ensure that your vitamin D3 levels are normal. I just say in Africa, it's hard to even get a vitamin D test. So it's really hard. So I just say, listen, we all know you're deficient. You're black, you're deficient. Unless you're in the farm, in the field, half naked, tilling the ground. If you're not in the field, half naked, tilling the ground, you're deficient. We know that vitamin D levels are important for a lot of, in fact, vitamin D is a hormone on its own, and it affects the brain in a fundamental way. It also helps to improve testosterone production. So if your vitamin D3 levels are low, you're in bad shape. So I just tell people, especially in Nigeria, take 10,000 international units on a daily basis. I take more than that. I've been doing that for years. So I'm still living, as you can see. I hope I'm normal, though some people may argue with that. Well, let's see. I have this, what I call a checklist. It's like a cheat sheet that helps me helps organize my thinking. So these are, I call them the laws of life, and in particular order. I'm not going to go into this right now, but the part that is that we are most affected by are the quality of the foods and drinks, what we put in our mouths, what we drink, what we eat. These are the things that also affect our endocrine systems. Obviously, your beliefs, your thoughts and emotions, we've talked about those things. All those are going to cause affect your endocrine system, your hormones, for better or for worse. Basic nutritional supplements, right? If you're not getting, I'm telling you now, you're not getting enough of these in your diet. So you want to make sure that these are covered in your supplementation. DHEA is like a building block for most of the hormones, especially the sex hormones, testosterone, progesterone, cortisol, estrogen. Estrogen, how could I forget estrogen? Ashwagandha is like a nice herb that helps to relax the body. Most of us need to relax a lot more. Vitamin D3, you've got to have it. You are not going to get it from food. Chromium helps with sensitivity to insulin. It helps you take in insulin. It helps you take in glucose. It helps your cells take in glucose. Zinc also helps in glucose metabolism. Zinc also helps in production of testosterone. Magnesium helps in pretty much everything, your hormones, your brain, and so on and so forth. So these are, I would say, these are among the most basic things you need to have. Probably DHEA. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Ashwagandha. Well, we just leave it at it helps with stress. But these four, you probably want to ensure that you're taking ample amounts. And some of these really good supplements, right, have magnesium and zinc as part of the complex. So you're probably covered where that is concerned, especially those of you listening to me at this point. But just so you know that your magnesium levels can be a problem if you're not focused on them. All right, so those are for supplements. Let's talk about nutraceuticals, which I like to tell people are the what shall we call them now? They are the nutritional supplements on steroids. Right? They're really the high-powered nutritional supplements. If we're going to strengthen our endocrine system, if we're going to strengthen our endocrine system, if we're going to improve the quality of our endocrine system so they produce the right hormones in the right balance, progesterone, testosterone, etc. in the right balance, then we're going to have to provide it with the building blocks it needs to make those hormones. And by the way, one of the things that happens as you grow older, especially women, is that both your estrogen levels and your progesterone levels drop as you approach and pass menopause. But what happens is that progesterone tends to plummet a lot further than the estrogen levels do. So what they see a lot of times is that there's what is known as an estrogen dominance, and that imbalance has a poor effect on the brain. And many times you might have noticed when you are going through menopause, you forgot words, you forget instances. I'm not going to say that's normal, but it's not abnormal either. It's kind of like happens. And they found out that people who are supplemented with maybe given a hormonal replacement therapy tend not to have those distressing symptoms as much. As you know, I prefer to go the natural way with the supplements. And that has helped. I mean, with my patients back home, it helps. That's helped a lot. I remember a military general, his wife, his younger wife, she was complaining about just being lethargic. She didn't really want to do anything. The sex life was in trouble too. And so we decided to provide her with some of these nutraceuticals that will help to strengthen the endocrine system. And the next time they came to see me, she was like, oh my goodness, she's like raging, has this raging sex drive. And unfortunately, I didn't give her husband the same thing. And she's much younger. So you can imagine how, awkward things might have been at home. All right, so you need a supplement that will help to boost DHEA. Like I mentioned, DHEA is what helps is what makes the other sex hormones. Phyto means plant, sterols mean like steroids. The sex hormones are actually steroid hormones. So there are many plants. Excuse me. There are plants that actually make the building blocks that make that make this phytosterols, that make the DHEA, that make testosterone, that make estrogen, that make the other sex hormones. By the way, if you're under stress, the body uses the same building blocks to make cortisol as it does to make testosterone. So if you're under stress, the body's going to end up making more of cortisol, which means your testosterone levels are going to be dropping and your estrogen levels are going to be dropping because it's pretty much the same building blocks. So one of the things you have to do if you're under stress, don't even think about it. If you're under stress, you got to step up of those other things that I mentioned, vitamin D3, magnesium, zinc. You're going to step them up, even if it's just for a short time during that stressful period. You want to make sure that you step that up. And of course, the supplements that contain DHEA. step them up during that stressful period because your body is being depleted. And once, as you know, your estrogen levels and testosterone levels are low and your cortisol levels are high for a long period of time, it is going to affect your ability to think, your ability to remember, your ability to learn. You will have no interest in learning. I can tell you that from a personal perspective. I mean, you lose all interest in life. And that's because your testosterone levels are high and they are affecting the brain. They are affecting the learning centers of the brain. They are affecting the memory centers of the brain. You don't want to let that happen. You don't want to let it keep happening. You gotta attack it. Got it? Okay, so back to the central governing system. We've got to help the endocrine system. Got to improve the endocrine system. And once you improve the endocrine system, you will see that the synapses, and we've got trillions, not just billions, we've got billions, 100 billion nerve cells or so. We've got trillions of connections between the cells. Again, this is where the action happens. It's in the nerves, the synapse, the connection between the nerve cells. That's when things begin to go wrong in things like Alzheimer's dementia. Hormones, the right testosterone, estrogen, and other hormones, even insulin, can help to nourish and protect the synapse so that it doesn't go the way of the others. So you need to ensure that your hormonal levels are okay. Sometimes you might have to go through the elaborate tests. I say this because other people may not have the privilege of being able to do an elaborate thyroid function profile, elaborate testosterone levels, estrogen levels, progesterone levels. Everybody can can have an accurate test done. In third world countries, it's a lot of money, I can tell you that. So I always recommend that just take things that are safe so that it doesn't, so that at least to some degree they are protected. All right, what happens if the damage has been done? Let's say your cortisol levels have been up, you're stressed out, you know you're stressed out, you've not been able to sleep, you wake up with a headache, you go to bed with a headache. Happened to me again. And I realized that I couldn't let this keep going because it was grinding. I mean, I could literally see my life. I could literally feel my life just leaking out of my body, kind of like a leaking bag, leaking sack of wine. It's not a sack of wine, is it? Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. It's like my life was just leaking out and I knew I had to do something about it. So if the damage has been done, you got to use the endocrine supplements as well, but you've also got to take in other things that will help to repair damaged brain cells. I can tell you, if you've gone through the things I just described, the brain cells have been damaged, especially the brain cells that have to do with memory. So what you want to do is you don't have to do any MRI scans, you don't have to do any PET scans. You just have to take the right building blocks that will help to repair your brain. And amongst the most important we've seen from personal experience and from our work with the foundation, you need high quality omega-3 fatty acids, because the omega-3 fatty acid is what the brain cells are made up of. Remember what I've said, 60% of your brain is made up of fats, and a very high percentage, over 50%, is made up of omega-3 fatty acids. So it just makes sense that you get a high quality. 95% of what you see in the health food store is not going to do what I just said it will do. You got to get it from special companies, and I was fortunate to be able to know which companies to get these things from. And I was able to use them to help a lot of kids with severe brain damage. So omega-3 fatty acids are among the first things that you want to do to help, in addition to supporting your endocrine system. The brain can be healed, the brain can be repaired, but it's proper nutrition. And because the brain is so complicated and so complex and so sophisticated, you got to have the absolute highest quality of nutrients it needs. You got to find the absolute best quality. And again, we can point you in the right direction. And if you're dealing with that kind of thing, yes, you probably have to you don't want to waste your money just buying any kind of omega-3 fatty acids. I promise you, don't waste your money. It's not going to be worth it. You got to get the right kind. Okay. I cannot end this without also talking about bugs. We talked about the great secret of life, remember? The great secret of life. The bug, about trillions and trillions of bugs are in our gut, our digestive system. There are some that are good, there are some that are bad. They're collectively called the microbiome, right? And what we now know is that these bugs, they're not just sitting down there eating our food. They are actively involved in pretty much every activity of the human body, including the hormonal activities, the metabolic activities. In fact, these bugs, these bacteria, viruses, and so on and so forth, and fungi, they actually produce chemicals that act like hormones. That's right, they act like hormones. So if you're depressed, if you're unhappy, if you're stressed out, a lot of those chemicals are not just being produced by the endocrine glands, they are being produced by the bugs in your gut. So you cannot escape living unhealthily because you can't escape, and that's one of the reasons why you eat this bad food and these very sweet stuff and chocolates and drink alcohol and drink wine and all those things. Not like wine and alcohol are necessarily bad. I'm just saying that sometimes we overindulge in those things and make the matters worse because they are affecting not just our brains, but they're affecting our bacteria in our guts. And they, in turn, depending on what you feed them, if you feed them good stuff, remember fiber, you feed them good stuff, they in turn will produce chemicals that will help to boost and strengthen your brain. If you don't feed them good stuff and you feed them a lot of junk, they in turn will produce chemicals that will negatively affect our brains. At one point, in one of our last talks, I said that over 50%, scientists have found out, over 50% of all the metabolites and chemicals in our blood are produced not by human cells, but by microbial cells. Oof, that took a long time. So everything from bacteria to fungi to viruses and other tiny little bugs are producing chemicals that are affecting our brains. And I saw that with autism. Autism is a big thing we do a lot with kids with autism. We found out that if we didn't deal with this first, these kids would act in such crazy ways. I've seen all kinds of crazy stuff. Everything from having erections at the age of 4 or 5 years old to playing. They were doing all kinds of kinky stuff. Probably isn't a good time. I shouldn't be talking about this on the air like this, but they're doing some kinky stuff, and that's because of the bugs that are being produced in their guts, and the bugs are producing bad chemicals that are affecting their brain and affecting their emotions. Some of them would have temper tantrums. Some of them will all of a sudden will start crying for no reason. Next minute they'll start laughing for no reason. Hormone-like substances that are being produced by these bugs. So you got to get those things under control. All right, so let's see what else. There's that picture again showing how the connection between the heart and the brain, connection between the gut and the brain. Make men large and strong. Make men large and strong, and tyranny will bankrupt itself in making shackles for it. Make your immune system large and strong. Make your endocrine system large and strong. Nourish your endocrine system. Give it the right foods. Give it the right nutrients, and you see you'll see that your depression and PTSD, anxiety, and anger, you'll find out surprisingly enough that you become more stable in your emotions. You become more relaxed, and your brain will thank you for it. So let's see, anything else? Oh yeah. I'm just going to mention this because the time is all gone. But LH luteinizing hormone is a hormone that is produced in the brain, and they are finding out that it's high levels of luteinizing hormone are triggering or causing are making Alzheimer's disease to be more likely in certain individuals. So people who have higher levels of luteinizing hormone tend to be more prone to dementia, especially Alzheimer's disease. Time has gone. Otherwise, I would have gone into that and probably go into that in a later time, or I'll do a short video on it. So thank you again for joining us. This has been fun. Remember, I mean, those of you living in Africa does not mean that dementia is not going to affect you guys, because it's growing all over the US and the Western world and spreading to third world countries as well. So it's best we understand what it takes to take care of our brains, take care of our endocrine systems, our immune systems, and so on and so forth, so that we don't become a statistic. So God bless. Stay tuned for more interesting videos. You can go to our website, brainandbodyfoundation.org, for all these videos that are there archived. Take care, stay strong, be healthy. Bye. Okay, so what I'm going to do is okay. All right, questions on share, stop share. We're still there.
Yep.
All right, how was it?
Very good. Very good.
Thank you.
Gotta get my phone back where it was.